Good morning, good very early morning to some. The convention of time, as it is across the world, means you may be experiencing late evening, middle of the day, conventional reality. Someone commented that I set up a good shot or something like that, I think in reference to me saying that I'm not a photographer or a YouTuber or a videographer. I don't have any skills like that. And I thought, well, actually, no, I did not set up a good shot there under the tree. The tree is there, the grass is there, the blue skies, the clouds, and whatever goes on in the background, it's there. I merely come along, interrupt the proceedings, place a camera. The extent of my ability is to aim the camera so that I am somewhere in the middle of the screen, which may be not correct. Maybe one should be a little off-center, I'm not sure, but to me symmetry is a quite important order of things, and perhaps it's always been my nature to like things to be a little bit in order. Maybe one could say borderline, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is strangely enough a term we use to describe people who like a lot of order. So there we are, another paradoxical expression of something we consider now abnormal, that somebody likes something to be absolutely right and in the right place all of the time and in order. But of course, when it becomes obsessive, that one keeps going back and checking and re-straightening and turning a switch on and off and this, and I'm not belittling this condition by any way. Please don't think that. I think it can be quite intrusive in one's life if it becomes a pattern of behavior that you are unable to see beyond. It takes over a little bit. It becomes the drive. And this can be seen much in a lot of religious tradition, a lot of what we call rites and rituals, where people are performing some functions of religiosity in a perfunctory way, perfunctory as in just doing, because they've done it before, they continue to do it, and habituality comes in to force, and rather the actions, the intention, the good intention behind the actions being the driving force, instead the habit becomes the driving force. And this is something in this practice of Buddhism, and I think other philosophies also, that we look to understand. So this is a very bleak room, but perhaps on YouTube or this, yes, on YouTube here with some bowl, my bowl is here. To some extent it's strategically placed. It isn't, it's there all the time. But if it wasn't, I'd probably put it there because it adds a little colour. My sitting cloth, I'm required really to sit on this. It's part of practicality, functionality, but also tradition. But it's this nice colour, this colour, we describe this colour, the Buddha describes this colour of robes as dung water. So they're a kind of a ginger, not a nice colour. And if you think dung water, cow dung, so dung excrement on the road, which you see a lot of here. I mean, there are a lot of cows wandering around India. They're holy, they're regarded as such, much like wandering ascetics, monks like myself. We're all cows wandering India, and fortunately well respected. The cows lay their dung, water accumulates, and you get this kind of gingery orange watered colour around it for the rain and what have you. And this is the colour of these robes and my Sangati here. But it's a colour that changes. If you look in the sunshine videos outside, it's very orange. If you look sometimes in others, it's very brown. But it's exactly the same piece of cloth, the same dye. It doesn't change colour. It's light, it's perception, it's causes and conditions surrounding the same piece of cloth that we describe as dung water. But almost it could be marigolds when I'm sitting outside in the apparently so well set up shot, which is indeed not. It's just me in the middle of nature, and Mother Nature, if there's such a thing, is what has set up this beautiful planet of ours, beautiful planet of ours, to exist in this shot. But this bleak room, which are concrete block walls with probably a fairly poor coat or maybe 2 coats of emulsion paint rolled over them, no plaster or anything like that, and these barred windows, which are rather an unattractive addition, are it as far as this room's concerned. But then this little bit of colour spices it up, like some seasoning on food. This is something that we naturally do. We move into a room, we may hang a picture on the wall, may put a carpet on the floor, not just for comfort, but for it to look quite nice. Pleasing our senses, satisfying that sense of desire, sensual desire. But also sensual desire as these habits, rites and rituals. Sensual desire can also be a hindrance to wisdom, the development of wisdom. We can think through the gratification of our sensual desires that, that's good, I've really achieved something today, this feels nice. When we've only perhaps deceived ourselves and made ourselves feel very temporarily better than we were feeling previously. Selves made ourselves feel better, that we describe us as time. Because I have a ritual of morning puja at 6 a.m, which is actually on YouTube live, so I oughtn't to be late. As part of my order of things, symmetry of life, something I'm not able to sit comfortably with is a lack of punctuality. In India, that sounds like a real contradiction of terms. It's almost essential, I think, here in India, that you're either very late or you just turn up extremely early. And this includes public transport. I mean, a train is equally more likely to be very late, but just as possible it can turn up half an hour early in order that you miss it and it's gone. It's because their priorities are perhaps better directed to more important aspects of our lives of a spiritual nature. I use the term loosely, spiritual, but the development of wholesome mind states, we could call it that, skillful activities that result in good behavioural patterns, rather than perhaps what we consider as skillful mind states of order and punctuality, which can actually result in unskillful or unwholesome behavioural patterns. You may think, well, I have a meeting at 3 o'clock, and you're talking to someone, listening to someone at 2:45, 2:50, and they're still talking at 2:55. Where is your attention? If you're a punctual person, it's at 3 o'clock. It isn't in the present moment with the person where it should be. This person in front of you, whom is always the most important person, because they are offering you their attention, and in respect of that you are offering your attention. But if half of your attention is on the clock, so elsewhere, it is not with them. So there's an example of how punctuality is a negative in our lives. So once again, this isn't what I was going to talk about at all. But leading on to that, and this idea of ourselves in this conventional reality, to use an often coined phrase, what is that exactly? We hear this term in Buddhism, not so much in the Theravada tradition, but in other traditions of Buddhism, but also in Hinduism, in other religions, a term sunyata. In the Sanskrit, it is spelt as it's said, S-U-N-Y-A-T-A, I think. I mean, I could be a little bit wrong there. In the Pali, the same word is S-U-N-N-A-T-A. Still pronounced the same, sunyata, because N's are like yas in Pali, which translated means emptiness. But also it has a slightly different meaning, quite a different meaning in the Theravada tradition to that of, say, the Northern or Mahayana tradition, the Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism. Their translation of emptiness is more something to be attained, and it is more of a thing, a state of mind, a condition, somewhere to aim for. A relinquishment, a letting go, something akin to moving towards our final state of attainment of Nibbana, which is Nirodha, the cessation of all material things. The 5 khandhas, the rupa khandhas, of form, this body, our physical being, then the feelings, both physical, resulting from this physical body and its presence, and the emotional feelings arising in the mind, these we call Vedana. So rupa is form, first of the 5 khandhas. Vedana is sensation, so feelings as such. Then through our sense doors through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. We are perceiving what we call realities, what surrounds us, these causes and conditions, resulting in either this setup shot of a bleak room with a little colour, or nature outside. It's being received through seeing, and what you're hearing through hearing. And this is sanya, perception, the third of these 5 khandhas. Khandhas just means, we translate it as aggregates, clumps, groups. Aggregates in the building industry are what we build things out of. So we make concrete out of some cement and some stone and some sand of varying different degrees of coarseness. And this is kind of what we translate khandhas as. It's quite a coarse translation, but these aggregates are what make up this personification, this idea of self. So when we take this rupa, and we take the feelings as a result of it, vedana, and we take sanya, these perceptions, we then build our ideas, our mental formations. And these in the Pali we call sankhara. And sankhara is absolutely just everything. This bowl is sankhara. I'm seeing it. If I touch it, I'm feeling it. And I'm hearing the tapping, hearing it. So to me, to all intents and purposes, this bowl is there. And this is sankhara, a mental formation, formed largely upon my recollection, my memory, my comparison to things I've experienced, touched, felt, seen, smelt, tasted, heard in my past, to bring my conclusion to the sankhara that this is a bowl. Now maybe actually if I'm carrying this on around with me in India, it's considered as all timber, I think they call it, a drum, because it looks more like a drum, doesn't it, than a bowl, when it's got the lid on. And this strange rattan stand. Now I'm rather hoping you can see this, what I'm doing here, because otherwise it's not going to make much sense. But to me, it's my bowl, I eat from it, and inside there's the metal bowl, which comes off of all of this external distraction. Another example, really, of perception and mental formations, in that one can see this as one thing. If you have a certain experience of living as an Asian in India, this would more be something one would play as a musical instrument than eat your supper, your lunch or your breakfast out of, understandably. And I think most people in the West would see it when it's in this form as not necessarily something you'd associate with the kitchen or the dining room. But a monk sees it very readily as livelihood. This is my livelihood, right livelihood in the Noble Eightfold Path. I carry this bowl with its strap around with me for people to put food in, for me to eat. So that is sankhara. My sangati, another piece of cloth that to me is that, a sangati. To others it's just a piece of ginger dung-coloured cloth. But it's a very important part of my 8 requisites. It's the third, it's my outer robe. It's become also part of these order of things, rites and rituals, in that our official ceremonies that we preside over or partake in Buddhism, one is required to wear this over the left shoulder in the temple in a certain way, a prescribed manner, a rite, a ritual. A lot of this we either gravitate towards or maybe even have a little aversion to, depending on our nature. And that nature is also formed from these khandhas. Now the fifth of these khandhas, which can get a little more complex, is vijnana, and vijnana is translated as consciousness. But in the khandha's sense, this is more a specific and literal translation of the word consciousness, awareness, knowing, or awareness and knowing, as I often or sometimes describe, a way of depicting, of explaining something else we call the citta in the Pali word, that doesn't really have a very good direct translation other than heart, mind, or knowing, or awareness, or even consciousness, is something slightly different, well, something very different and aside to this consciousness that we're referring to in the 5 khandhas, which is the consciousness, the awareness of the presence of rupa, this bodily form, and the Vedana, the sensations, the feelings, the perception, sanya, and then those sankharas, those mental formations we make from all of this. If it wasn't for consciousness, the other 4, we would not be aware of them. So, in this, if you don't turn on this video, the content will not be seen, and therefore, in your mental in your consciousness, in your vijnana, it isn't in existence until you press the button and it's playing when you're seeing and hearing and experiencing this video, or whatever it is we're experiencing, bringing it into consciousness. So it makes up then our sense of being, and this is largely where responsible for and where our sense of this self is coming from. Now, emptiness in the Pali language of Sunnatā, the Sunnāta, is more akin to a sense of non-self, like Anattā. Anattā doesn't mean no self, it means not self. That is, these khandhas that make up this rupa, this body, and consciousness and perception and mental formations, and then this actual consciousness of those is lost the track there. I heard something unusual outside that took my mindfulness just slightly away from the subject. One still has to be aware when you're in nature of the goings on around you. So to some extent, mindfulness has to be quite open. And this is consciousness. This kind of mindfulness is consciousness, as in vijnana consciousness. Whereas citta, awareness, knowing, is to some extent less affected by the rupa, the aggregates, these khandhas, as in it settles somewhere a little bit of distance away from that we call this being, this set of circumstances which are a result of the causes and conditions surrounding what we perceive and what we call ourselves. And Sunnatā in the Theravada tradition tries to really explain emptiness as a way of there being not this self, but purely the knowing, the awareness, the capacity to exist but outside of this form of the khandhas, this association with the khandhas not being part of what witnesses, what sees. So for instance, when an emotion arises of happiness, it is there and evident through perception, through feelings, through our conscious awareness, vijnana. But that which knows we are happy is unperturbed. It is not happy, but it is aware, it knows we are happy. But this that knows we are happy also knows we are sad, which is known also through feelings and conscious awareness of this emotion of sadness. The knowing is unperturbed, unaffected. It isn't sad. So this conscious knowing that is separate from conscious awareness, as in the five aggregates, is free of self. It is detached from the causes and conditions producing the sankhara and producing vijnana, but also takes with it the momentum produced by these causes and conditions through our actions of body, speech and mind, whether they be wholesome or unwholesome, because of course this is what creates the causes and conditions for this knowing to be in. When one can see this citta, this knowing, clearly, evidently, as something separate from the five khandhas, then whatever the circumstances in which these five khandhas that make up this perceived self we call us, ourselves, are in, is largely irrelevant. There will be conditions and there will be feelings, there will be sankhara, there will be consciousness, and it may be good, it may be bad. But within this sense of sunyata, emptiness, there is no opinion, no liking, no disliking. And this is where we find the what in the Pali word is nirodha, the cessation of essentially desire for something to either be and consistently continue to be as it is, or to not be as it is, or to be more of what it is. Desire for wanting something we have, we don't have, or not wanting something we have, whether it be a situation or a material thing. And this emptiness in the Theravada tradition, in the Pali word, which is not so often used really, sunyata, is just that, an emptiness of desire. It is akin to nirodha, the cessation of desire or cessation. So cessation of this tie, or this relinquishment of this tie, the breaking of this fetter, this tie to these sensations, which are purely bred through sankhara. Now in the chanting we chant that these sankhara are not self. We chant this repeatedly as one of the reflections each day, reminding ourselves as a reflection from the teachings that although they're very evidently there, visible, and we can feel them and experience all of these five khandhas in our everyday lives, they are not self. And they also, we repeat, we chant that they are not permanent, they are impermanent. But what it is that is unchanging and is unconditioned and is therefore deathless is this knowing, this citta, this conscious awareness, for want of a better description, albeit the same as the translation of vijnana, consciousness, two different things. This remains constant, this that knows. So like when you see when you are in the experience of a congested traffic jam, hold up, rush hour in the middle of a city with all of the lights and the actions, and if you're in this situation here in India, there's lots of horns beeping and cars here and everywhere, it all looks very, very and feels very, very, very hectic, and you're very deeply involved and emotionally affected, and it's all there and present as an almost overwhelming experience in life. But if you're sitting on an aeroplane 20 or 30,000 feet in the air, flying over a city, it's a beautiful picture of pretty lights, peace and serenity and tranquility. But it's the same thing, it's the same experience from a different perception. And to understand this citta, we just need to put a little space, not 20,000 feet or 30,000 feet, but just a little space between that we are experiencing and that which knows what we are experiencing. And that is also emptiness, because it's emptiness of self. You are no longer what you're experiencing with sanya, sankhara and vijnana as a result of your rupa and vedana feelings and from your body and thinking mind. You're at a little distance from that, seeing that that is just what's going on. Becoming the witness, the observer, stepping aside and giving yourself a break. So, when I speak and have spoken about the elements that make up this rupa side of what we perceive to be ourselves, of being solidity, liquidity, gaseousness and temperature, so earth, water, wind and fire in the traditional sense, I also add, as we have in Buddhism, the fifth and sixth element of space and consciousness. Well, the consciousness I refer to is not the consciousness of the rupa khandhas, vijnana, but the consciousness of citta, that which knows. In some contexts. In others, it may be that I'm referring to vijnana, the context as in the khandhas. But usually it's citta, that which knows, the witness that I've just described. And space is not emptiness. Space is infinite. We have no edge, no end to space. Whereas emptiness in the literal meaning of the word is something is empty, it is contained. So this bowl, it isn't empty, it's got some things in it, but if it was empty, the emptiness would be contained by the bowl. And the lid on contains emptiness. That isn't space. It is also space that's making up the emptiness, because space is nothingness. it makes up everything. So in some respects, space can be sunyata, because sunyata is often translated as nothingness. And space really is nothingness, hence its infinity, its infinite capacity. In fact, there is no, with space, border, because that makes up the metal of this bowl is atoms which are mainly made of space, with some nuclei and protons whizzing around to create forces, to create solidity, the element of the earth element, solidity, or in the case of water, liquid, or gas, air, gas. Emptiness can be a cup, a bowl, with some gas, air, oxygen and hydrogen within it. But that isn't space. Space is nothingness. So in fact, space passes through atoms. It's neither, it's borderless, it's infinite. So this is the difference between emptiness and space, as in the sixth element, space. Emptiness is more akin to the third element, wind or gas, in terms of the elements of space within something. But ultimately, what we're trying to, or what is trying to be attained to, when one hears this word in Buddhism and in other traditions of sunyata, is that ultimate feeling of nothingness or emptiness. But we tend to use this as our final attainment that we're striving towards, which is where we are free from suffering. And this is nirodha, this is cessation, and this is what leads to nibbana, the ultimate cooling of desire and no more desire. So cessation in that sense, because the desire that has been the cause, the root cause of suffering, has been wiped out, eradicated, cut off at the roots so as it cannot return, through the development of wisdom, the understanding of how desire comes about, what it is connected to, the khandhas, and our perception within those, and how we continually fuel this desire through trying to achieve gratification, trying to satisfy the insatiable, trying to get the best. There is never the best, there is always better. You used to see through the advertising campaigns through the 70s in my time growing up, best ever, this product would be advertised, best ever soap powder, new, improved, best ever. And I used to wonder, where does it end? There would be this, it could be dog food, it could be soap powder, it could be a car, but they were getting better and better and better. And I always question in my mind, where would this end? This is the best. If this is the best, surely there can't be better, can there? Because you're saying it's the best now. But then next week something better will come along. A new, improved version of what was already the best, which means this wasn't the best in the first place. You see, this is the cycle of desire. This is the fueling of desire. This is the momentum of self-perpetuation. This is the making of this very idea of self through the root causes of desire, rooted in greed, just wanting, and also aversion, which is a negative form of desire, not wanting. And then delusion or ignorance, really, of not understanding that by keep trying to satisfy these desires, we're just increasing them. There's always better, we want the best, the next best, the next best. So through clear seeing developing this seeing clearly ability of anicca, impermanence, and dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, not self. Through this understanding, through this development of this wisdom, we see the fruitless labours we go through to satisfy unsatisfiable desires, and what keeps us tied, fettered, attached to rebirth, both in the sense of rebirth into another life after we die, after this bodily form, this rupa, expires, and also in the sense of moment to moment. One moment we're living in this life, but the next moment is led by desire to improve or to change or to keep the same what we have now, leading us into the next moment continuously. And when we see this clearly, we are released from that trap. We're released from that delusion, releasing us from aversion and then releasing us from greed. So extinguishing greed, hatred and delusion, destroying them, lifting them up by the roots, is the answer, is how we reach cessation, nirodha, cessation of desire, and this comes as a result of the cessation of, well, the realization, the knowledge, the wisdom we have developed through this practice. So that wasn't really quite what I was going to talk about, but now I've forgotten what I was going to talk about, but that's okay, because we can talk about that next time. So now, having spoken for more than half an hour, I didn't actually see the precise time when I looked then first, when I began talking, but it's still dark. It will soon start to get light here. It's now 20 to 6, so I will end this talk here, move my camera from its perception of me sitting here in my kuti, my room, this bleak little place. No, I'm not complaining, I like things simple like this. To the temple just over there for some chanting, some reflection on the Buddha's teachings, and to some extent that perfunctory aspect of a monk's life, of monastic life, where we perform this chanting, this ritual, but for the benefit of others, and also ourselves, where it's the recollection of the teachings. Now that is now moving on to what I was going to talk about before I started, so I'm going to leave that for a subject for another day. I hope there's something you can find here of interest or useful, and it may be that it's a little confusing and might want clarification, so please make comments and pick me up on anything you may feel I have said incorrectly or not explained clearly enough, and I will try and answer it with you directly and through questions and answers here. But if there's something useful, please use it and share it if you would like to do so, if you're inclined to do so with your friends. Don't keep it just to yourself, and if not, then just ignore it and don't let it trouble you or others. Let it go. So thank you for watching, and if it's the beginning of your day, have a wonderful day. If it's the end, have a very good night. Thank you.